In other words, the translation of which is purity in terms of mind is simply for the sake of purity in terms of view. Today, 19th of September, we have again gathered here for a weekly mindfulness workshop where we practice for 1.5 hours and then get involved in a discussion and primarily listening to a talk, and that which is called listening supportive factor. So for that, for a few weeks or few months, we have been discussing the discourse called Rilacharya. In other words, Ratha Vinita Sutta. So this discourse is basically a discussion between two arahants. But it started, it has a very nice background, very nice scene behind the discussion. When the Blessed One asked from the monks who visited him after Rain's retreat, whether there is any leader in your community, especially those who are living in the land I was born, leader with 10 qualities. The 10 qualities the Blessed One mentioned were modest, contented, secluded, unentangled, aroused persistence, virtue, concentration, discernment, release, and the knowledge and vision of the release. So he's asking whether there is anyone, any leader with those qualities. And not only he has those qualities, he's encouraging and advising and urging others also to develop the same qualities. When the monk says, yes, there is someone like that, his name is Punna. We call him Punna Mantani Putta. In other words, son of Mantani, whose name is Punna. When the monks said this, Venerable Sariputta was around the Blessed One, so he wanted to meet Venerable Punna and disclose that his disciples are so pleased with him, and they are considering that you as a great leader because you have these 10 qualities. So time passed, and there was one day Venerable Punna visited the Blessed One and so heard Venerable Sariputta. He straight away got up from the seat and took his sitting cloth and started following Venerable Punna. Once the two met, after exchanging the usual greetings, he asked Venerable Punna, Venerable Sariputta asked Venerable Punna, are you living this holy life under the Blessed One? Then Venerable Punna says, yes, my friend. And then he's asking why you are doing it. And in separate questions, in the form of questions, he's asking whether you are doing this for the purity in terms of virtue, or whether you are doing it for the purity of the mind, or purity of the view, or purity of perplexity, or purity in terms of knowledge and vision of what is path and what is not the path, or purity in terms of knowledge and vision of the way, or whether it is purity in terms of knowledge and vision. And for each of these questions, Venerable Punna is saying no. And then it looks like, from our perspective, that Venerable Sariputta was annoyed, but it is not so, because Venerable Sariputta knows that the answers will be no, and which is the right answer. But they are having these discussions not for the benefit of them, but for the benefit of people like us who will be following this teaching. And we definitely know after that what's happening when we practice. So Then Venerable Sariputta is asking if you are saying that the holy life is lived, is not lived for any of those things. Why are you living the holy life? Then he said, for the sake of total unbinding, through getting rid of clinging. Then Venerable Sariputta then relates the previous questions he asked to the total unbinding. He's asking whether purity in terms of virtue is total unbinding, or whether it is purity in terms of mind total unbinding, or purity in terms of view total unbinding, or is the overcoming of perplexity is total unbinding, is the knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path total unbinding, or is the knowledge and vision of way total unbinding, or something else is total unbinding. Then Venerable Puna once again says, no, none of these can be considered as total unbinding, because in each of these stages, even when you purify your virtue, or even if you purify your mind, even if you purify your view, or even if you purify perplexity and you don't have any doubts, but still there is some sort of clinging at very subtle levels, subtle layers. So therefore, if you take any of these things individually and say that it is total unbinding, we are declaring something which has clinging as total unbinding. So therefore, it is wrong and it is no. And then Venerable Puna says, I'll give you an example. And he's giving an example. The example is that suppose the king wants to go to a faraway place, and he just can't use one chariot, one car. He's having 7 carts, and from the first one he goes whatever the distance possible, and the second one whatever the distance possible, so on and so forth. He goes to his destination using all the 7 carts. So if someone says at the destination that you have come to the destination from the last one, then it is wrong. And or says you have taken any of the previous chariot only to come to the destination, that is again wrong. As we can obviously see, all the 7 chariots have contributed to reaching the destination, or to reach the destination rather. So the Venerable Puna says, in the same way, purity in terms of virtue is simply for the sake of purity in terms of mind. And purity in terms of mind is simply for the purity in terms of view. Purity in terms of view is simply for the purity of overcoming the perplexity. And purity in terms of overcoming perplexity is simply for the sake of purity to exactly know what the path and what is not the path. And purity in terms of knowledge and vision of what is and what is not the path is for the sake of purity in terms of knowledge and vision of the way how you will have to practice. And then once you know the way, it's simply for the sake of purity in terms of knowledge and vision. Once you know the way, whether you actually reach the destination, and knowledge and vision of the destination. And knowledge and vision, purity in terms of knowledge and vision, is simply for the sake of total unbinding. And then you can see whether your unbinding is happening, whether your clinging is disappearing. So in this manner, one leads to the other, and that leads to the next, and so on and so forth. It's a path, it's a way how the practice will develop. And this is very famous, especially in Theravada practice and in Sri Lanka. They use this as Visuddhi Magga, where they are taking these 7 stages and explaining how the practice will unfold. And we have discussed, I think, a couple of the stages in this. One is to the best of our ability. The first one we discussed was purity in terms of virtue. And virtue is something that any religious denomination will be talking about. And here we are not simply talking about virtue. We are talking about the purity in terms of virtue. Virtue means we restrain physically and verbally. So physical and verbal restrainment is virtue, and the basic restrainment is, as we recited, observed at the beginning of the session, observed 5 precepts. So that's the starting point of virtue. And purity in terms of virtue means this virtue, this restrainment becomes a support for the practice. And if it is supporting the practice, then it's a virtue, and it should not be a hindrance. So what it means is, there are a lot of people who think you will have to first 100% complete virtue, and then only you will have to get onto the practice of or development of the mind. But the Blessed One is saying, it is not so. You just keep practicing and see whether you are able to practice without any disturbances, mental disturbance. And if that keeps improving, and if it is not going from bad to worse, then you are becoming gradually, momentarily, and virtuous. So when momentary purification enhances, when momentary purification develops, then you will gradually start, because of your practice, because of your mindfulness, because of your attention to yourself, you will start seeing your own weaknesses, your own faults. So some of you have been discussing those things with me. That is because your practice is going well. And when the practice is going well, you start seeing yourself. So the mind in that case is trying to suggest. So you are having all these nasty things. So you have to first get rid of those things. Otherwise, the practice will not be proper, or practice will not continue. That's a suggestion of the mind. But what Buddha says is, if you start seeing these things, that itself is the confirmation that you have purified yourself physically and verbally, because the things are happening inside. Things are happening in your mental process. Things are happening mentally only. Nothing is getting transmitted or transmitted. So therefore, that mental, what you call, puzzle or confusion is a confirmation of the purity of virtue. In other words, physical and verbal restraint. Since you are physically and verbally restrained, restricted yourself, control yourself, managed, then the next layer of activities is coming up, which is the mind. So that is called purity in terms of virtue, and it is not therefore the 100% adherence to each and every second of the restrainment of your physical and verbal activities. That will eventually happen. That will eventually happen. But if your mental confusion, so as to what is mental confusions, to see that you are not mentally purified, is a confirmation of the physical and verbal restraint. So then the next stage is to go to the purification of the mind. For the purification of the mind, these thoughts or these mental, what do you call, energies that are getting developed, or perceptions and suggestions and internal dialogues that go through within you are broadly categorized as hindrances, right? Or we call them obsessional defilements. So these obsessional defilements we discussed last time, they are broadly categorized into five classes: sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, anxiousness and worry, and skeptical doubt. So we discussed these things in detail last time. Now you are not involved in sensual activities, but you can see your sense desire. You are not involved in fighting and shouting at people, but still you can see ill will within you. You are more and more doing your mindful walking and mindful sitting, which does not give you sense desire and ill will. And then sloth and torpor will gradually settle in because you are not pumping yourself up. You are not energizing yourself in the usual manner with the sense faculties, or you are not fighting with your sense faculties. So, for the same reason, the anxiousness and worry will develop. You will be more anxious of what is going to come and what is going to happen next time, or you will be worried about things that have happened in the past because your mind is now digging up the old graves. So it may start stinking. So you may start worrying about things. So those are the hindrances. And the last one is skeptical doubt, which is you start suspecting whether your path is right or whether the teacher is right, whether Buddha is right, whether Dhamma is right, or whether there are really people who are practicing. So the difference between obsessional defilement and the other defilements, which is transgressional defilement, is that so far as obsessional defilements are concerned, nobody else will know, only you yourself will know. So no third party will be able to see. But you may feel terrible at the beginning, although it is not seen by outsiders and others, but you feel that it is so terrible, and because you now very clearly see how your mind is working. But it's only at the beginning. With the right instruction, right advice, right attitude, you may be able to overcome it. And that motivates you to be more and more mindful, to get closer to the object. So when you feel terrible with the hindrances, what you will do is you take that as a motivation and you take that as a challenge, and you will try to be attentive more and more to your breath, more and more to your walking. If that doesn't work, you will start being mindful of the hindrances that are coming up. So therefore, either way, it will work in favor of the practitioner. That will start sharpening your practice. And this leads to be, this leads for you to be with I am here now. So that when you get more and more close to yourself, and not only physically and verbally, and even mentally, you are managing the disturbances and the difficulties that are arising from the hindrances, and that will lead now to open up another layer, and that layer is called view. When you develop your mind, what happens is we basically think that development of mind means you keep your attention all the time with the main object. Development of mind means you keep your attention to the breath, or you keep your attention to the walking. And when you do that, when you have that viewpoint, when you have that way of thinking, that might get disturbed, that might get challenged, that might get attacked sometimes. You may feel, irrespective of how much you try, there are instances you aren't able to keep your attention to the main object. And it may be disturbed by sounds, it may be disturbed by vision, especially in walking, or it may be disturbed by thoughts, mainly. It may be disturbed by aches and pains. So when these things are happening, although you have developed your mind, and although you know that you will have to be aware of here now I am, the strong view that you have developed over such a long existence in the samsara, that view will come all the time and tell you there are so many disturbances now around you, and you aren't able to keep your attention to the main object. So the mind will always keep suggesting you to have the attention to the main object. And having the attention to the main object is something that we may have practiced in the past. In the past, the Buddha's teaching was not there. So when the Buddha's teaching was not there, what only existed was having the attention to a particular object. And only thing they knew was to get rid of hindrances, you take an object and you have your attention to that object. And if you have the attention to that object, you can suppress all the hindrances. That's all what they knew pre-Buddha, before Buddha. But what Buddha said was, it is not necessary to have the attention to just one object. You take one object as the reference point, but it is not the ultimate end. And when you have disturbances, you will be able to be mindful of the disturbances as well. So in this manner, you will have to clear your way of your way of thinking, your way of looking at your own practice. And this view is so strong when your practice is developing, because when you are sitting and meditating, or sitting and observing your breath, or when you are walking, the suggestions that is coming from the mind is so intense. And if you analyze those, I'm not suggesting you to analyze, but if you really see these suggestions, and what it will most of the time complain is that you are not able to keep your attention to the main object. That is because of that strength that you have in your mind as a strong view, right? So that should get purified, and that purity starts happening only when the purity of mind starts happening. I'm not saying only after the purity of mind has finished this thought. No, it starts when the mind purity happens. Then the purity of view also, start playing a role, playing a part. Right. So it's like when when the front wheel start going, rear wheel also will start. So like that, if it's a trailer or if it's a train, all the wheels start, gradually follow the first wheel that start rotating. So like that, this is not just only once the purity of mind is completed, the purity of view will happen. No, all these things will start working. But for the purpose of explanation, we are taking them individually and showing a linear relationship in such a way that listeners will be able to understand. So to put it into perspective, The purity in mind in itself is a purity of view, right? So when your mind gets purified, when your attention or when your understanding becomes more and more stronger, that you can be mindful not only of the main object, but you can be mindful of any object that becomes prominent in that particular time. And therefore, that itself is a purity of view. But actually, you are purifying your mind. But you are purifying your mind with the right attitude. So then it becomes a purity of view. And also, similarly, purity in virtue in itself is a purity of view, right? So maybe we had in the past an attitude that we will have to 100% complete, completely observing the precept. Otherwise, we cannot enter into the next stage. It is not so. You can enter into the next stage, or you can enter into developing the mind, or you can start your own meditation practice, no matter how bad you are. Even if you are a murderer, even if you are a robber, even if you are a womanizer, even if you are such nasty person doing all these things, Buddha said, my teaching is to purify beings. So to purify beings, I'm talking about the beings who are not purified. So therefore, he says, anyone just join my club, and then I have a technique, I have a pill, I will give that pill, and you will start purifying yourself. So therefore, if someone comes into the practice, and that itself is the purity of view, right? So that, and also once he comes, and if he understands, if he says, if he's not crying that I have done this, I have done those, and still I am doing these things, but I don't think I will be able to practice. And when he hears that, no matter what you are doing, you try to be mindful of those things as well. And at the same time, you keep on your practice. And if he believes that, if he changes his attitude, if he looks at the way how his own practice is developing, that itself is a purity in view. So, in other words, this is the changing the attitude towards the whole thing, and in other words, towards morality and towards concentration or towards development of mind. Now that's the starting point. And now it has to come to maturity. So when it comes to maturity, or before coming to maturity, I would like to give another starting point to summarize all what I said so far as purity of view is concerned. There is a discourse called Grade 40. And in that discourse on Grade 40, Buddha is giving a nice beginning for the purification of view. What he says is, if the practitioner knows that he is having a wrong view, if the practitioner knows that he is having the wrong resolve, if the practitioner knows that he has a wrong speech, if the practitioner knows that he has a wrong action, if the practitioner knows that he has a wrong livelihood, and that very knowing and that very acceptance of that in itself is the purity of view. So this is 100% in line with mindfulness. What mindfulness says is that you simply become aware. And if you, when you have a wrong view, and if you are aware that you have a wrong view, that itself is the right view. You know, we have Eightfold Noble Path. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first 5 points in the Eightfold Noble Path. So for these 5, maybe you are not still on the right side. but you know that you have wrong view, wrong resolve, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood. And that very knowing is opening the door for you, for yourself to correct. So therefore, that is the beginning, and that is what Blessed One says, Sattanang Visuddhya, which means purification of beings. So when purification of, to put it this way, why this view purity was so important, and why this view purity is was discussed during Buddha's time, is because there were a lot of other teachers, and they had a lot of other teachings and a lot of other attitudes, a lot of other views that they were teaching to their own disciples. So it was a huge challenge for the Blessed One to correct themselves, to rectify themselves, because most of the practitioners coming to Buddha have been with someone else before. So therefore, Buddha had this challenge of purifying their view, purifying their attitude, purifying the way they look at themselves and the life and the world. So this is why when the practice is developing, those things that they have developed with other teachers, the attitudes are coming up and disturbing their practice. So this is why purity of view is important. Although there were no such, we can't say that there are no such teachings now. Even now we have such teaching. So especially in the Western world, when they come into the practice, they come from their own way of thinking. So that way of thinking start disturbing or not disturbing, getting purified their view. So you may see that as a disturbance, but it's not actually disturbance. That is how, when the purity is happening, your thinking pattern gets more and more prominent, comes to light, and that thinking pattern is the view. So I don't think I'm going into any more details of the purity of view today, and we can discuss the rest in the next meeting. Thank you very much for listening. I will be concluding part 1 of the purity of view here. So from the next session, I will be discussing part 2 of purity of view. Thank you very much. Good. And any discussion points?
Teruan Saranam, sir.
Teruan Saranam.
I just want to relate to what you said about the main subject.
Yeah.
During the practice, and just relate that to like my own progress. I think my main subject has lately become like obviously like this pain I've been feeling like every time I sit down.
Yeah.
And so I've just been focusing on that, and I feel like the practice has been like pushing that to like higher thresholds, so like experiencing higher levels of that pain. And I've been starting to feel that when I do the walking as well. So I just like try to focus on that pain coming up from my leg. And it's progressed to a point where like just facing that pain has like has started being reflected in my like day-to-day life. So so every time I'm faced with like a difficult situation, like my mind always goes back to like my practice, and like I'm able to like deal with difficult situations a lot better now. And it's all in the practice. So like every time before I sit down, like I do get like this sense of fear, like obviously like because of that subject, I guess. But I'm just getting that's pretty much my practice lately.
So all right. So will you be able to explain that rather we call it the object rather than the subject?
Oh yeah,
Um,
object.
yeah. And will you be able to explain that pain?
It's like a burning sensation, to be more
Right.
specific. Yeah. It comes up from my toes. I feel it in different parts of my legs.
Yeah.
Um,
So
but yeah,
is it only in the legs?
yeah, mostly in the legs.
Right. When you say mostly, do you at least in a subtle way feel in the other parts of the body?
Um, when I'm not in the practice, like say sometimes I'll be like sitting on the couch, I do feel it on my
Yeah.
shoulder.
Yeah.
Like it's more like it's more like a anxiety attack or something, but it's completely different to what I feel during the practice. But
Yeah.
because of the practice, I'm more like I have more like discipline to face those anxieties. So like I have more discipline to like sit with them, like until it's like it's disappeared kind of thing.
Yeah. So in other words, what
Yeah.
you're trying to say is you don't try to meddle with it and you just let it. If you came, you go.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So
it's also more like being able to face it kind of thing instead of being scared of it.
yeah, good. Good.
Yeah.
That's what I want to hear. And when you
Yeah.
have this sensation like anxiety attack, other times, what do you do?
Um, I used to I used to just like not be a fan of it pretty much. Like I used to just get frustrated every time I get them. Um,
Yeah.
but now like I feel like a bit more courageous, like feel a bit more brave to like sit with. So well, yeah, when I'm confronted by these anxiety attacks and stuff,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I feel like I could just like jump into it and like there's a kind of like a enjoyment in in that process as well.
Good.
Um,
Good. Good. So let me put it this way: after listening to you, those are you feel that they are anxiety attack because there was a time when I was practicing. The whole time I was so anxious, so much of anxiety,
yeah.
and I did not have anyone to talk about it. And
Mm,
only thing is, I was involved with going cast practice. So I went to one day I wanted to go and drop my then wife to going cast retreat. So I thought I will take an appointment with one of the teachers and discuss with them. So I
mm,
went and discussed with them. Only thing they said was it is normal, it is normal, it is normal. They did not give any explanation why it is happening
mm,
what I should do. But after meeting Bhante Damajiva, what he says is these things are always there in our body. These currents are always there, but we were not reaching them. We were reaching the external things that our eyes can see, nose can smell, ears can hear, tongue can taste, but our attention was never inside with the body.
mm.
So, but now with the practice, our attention is less
Yeah.
outside, more inside. So, as a result, we call it the heightening of
Mm,
sensitivity. So because of this sensitivity, we start seeing this electric shocks and vibrations and sensations that are happening and the fitness and things like that. Every time things are not settled, we start feeling those things both physically and mentally,
mm.
right? So that is happening because of the heightening sensitivity. And now you have the right attitude to be brave and face the devil, right? So
Yeah.
in Sri Lanka, what you may have heard, we have something called chasing devils. To chase devils, what we do is we call them by name. When we call them by name, they get scared. It's exactly the same thing. If you
Mm,
get scared, they will chase us. But what the
mm,
Buddha is teaching us is let anything come, you try and go to the eye of the storm. you try and go to the epicenter of whatever is happening and try and see whether you can see the beginning, whether you can observe what is going on. And that gives
Yeah.
the tremendous development of personality, which outsiders cannot see.
Mm.
And it's good that you have that attitude,
Yeah.
mentality. So that's the purification of the will.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
you have two options. Either you get scared, or you have the attitude of bring it on, I'm ready.
Mm. Yeah.
And when that is there, you are changing your mind. Nothing else will be able to attack. So good on you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anything else?
Okay, Bhante and Lanta here. And,
Hello.
yeah, practice is progressing every day, doing like 30 minutes walking and 30 minutes sitting. And pretty much it's like autopilot. It just happens. And it's kind of, I don't put a lot of effort now. It's happening. And but the currents, like the thoughts comes and goes. It's mainly with the very strong ones, with the things associated with the life. And I can overcome with, like, yeah, after some time, especially walking. And then the main technique, I would say, feeling the walking while you kind of with these thoughts, like you get a like a third feeling, or like a, yeah, that you're walking, and sensations are there. And same times, some thoughts are there as well. And main thing is, don't get upset about it, and don't try to fight with it. And then sitting meditation, yeah, it's for some reason, yeah, I couldn't do a lot of breath cycles, couple of breath cycles. And it's I can feel the whole movement of air to the from nostril to the tummy. And but few cycles every time, it's just goes to a dark place. And sometimes in between thoughts comes, and corrections happens. Um Sometimes, like, suggestions coming in, like, there's no improvement, you're in the same place, like, just you're doing this. And but one thing I know is, even that suggestion, I have to do more and more. And it just because I'm kind of all day with my mind, and what I'm doing. Even you said that it's very regretful. Like, sometimes, like, when you talk, like, you feel that you have to talk something. Like, even someone, today I'm talking with someone, my mind saying upfront, if you talk too much, you can't tell the absolute truth. And because there are so many, especially workplaces, so many things you can't reveal, and you can't, then had a feeling about, like, why I'm doing it. I don't know, just not talking is maybe the answer, but
Yeah.
still you need to communicate. And things like that. Yeah, going through this process. And but there's a huge desire to achieve something more. And that mindset is there, like, never satisfied. That's me, I think.
Hmm.
But we'll see.
Right. Yeah.
Patient.
No.
I won't wait.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you have any question in particular from what you said?
One thing is, for day-to-day dealings, if you feel regret about what you talk, and how do you manage or how do you control your desire to speak nonsense, like reduce that desire? Like, you know, being aware is fine, but I don't know, when I start speaking, whether I have a control over it.
Now, number one, from what you said about your walking and sitting, your mind is getting sharper and sharper, and as a result, you are able to see a wider spectrum, right? Because if you have your attention only to one object, mind is not sharp enough. But if you can diversify your mind and break your mind into few areas, and then you will start seeing more things. So this is why, you know, the walking is happening, the thinking is going on, and you hear sounds as well, you see things as well, but still you just keep walking. So that happens because you are not getting involved with any of the damn things that you see. But your awareness is high. Although awareness is high, the clinging is become lesser and lesser. That is why you get more and more options on the table. You're not picking up anything. And for the same reason, when you go to your day-to-day work, especially in office, and we have the habit of, you know, chatting. We have the habit of, you know, talking about the previous person or the person who is talking at the moment. So you see that yourself. That is because your attention is inward, and that is how the purity of virtue comes, or rather not purity of virtue. Purity of virtue is already happening. Now the purity of mind is coming. Outsiders don't know that you are seeing that you are talking too much. You are talking too much only from your perspective. From the listener's perspective, you are contributing to the discussion, or you are a social being. But within you, you see, you know, this is something that should not happen. That's an opportunity for you to purify your mind. Right? So seeing that, although it is regrettable, right? Seeing that is our next step. So when that happens, since the mind is working so fast, especially with the speech, and our tendency of mind is always to be more worrying rather than being happy. So we take the first option. This should not have happened, so therefore I'm worried, and we regret it. So, and it has happened, and we have no control. But only thing we can do is not to control it. Now we can be aware of the fact that we are regretting as well. Right? So when now you are not trying to be mindful of the fact that you are talking too much. Now you are trying to be mindful of the fact that you are regretting yourself. So when you are mindful of the fact that you are regretting, then the value of the speech that you are doing will also naturally diminish. And that will also lead to controlled speaking thereafter. Right? So therefore, we most of the time forget the fact that we will have to be aware. Because the other force is the regret or the worrying phase is much stronger. But you have the ability to observe, because you have dug up this stronger force from mindfulness. Right? So therefore, this very same thing can be used to face that as well. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Bhante. I think I'll try to practice more. And yeah.
No, you're going with the right attitude. I'm glad.
Thank you, Bante. And I want to come to Nisarne on 26th of November, and I'll send an email whether I can come early morning and spend day. It's a Saturday, I think. Is there any program I can attend for like a day program? I'll send an email and see.
Not sure. 26th November, I will be down under, and Bante will be outside.
Yeah, but I know that, but I just want, as I talk to you while you're here, I just want to come to Nisarnavane and join some normal program, like a 1 day.
Just are you planning to stay overnight?
At the moment, I don't have plan to stay overnight, but I can do it, but it's not for many nights. I can do only 1 night or something. That's why I thought maybe I come early morning and probably stay.
Okay. Just send me an email closer to the day. Then I will work out something for you.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Any other comments, questions, suggestions, complaints?
I just have one comment, when you and other people talk about their experiences, it just normalizes it for everybody, I guess, and makes it easier to accept those things within ourselves. Thank you.
I really did not hear that well. Chatu, will you be able to give me a summary?
When you and others spoke of their anxieties, their experiences, that normalizes it for everybody else that's listening, and I guess gives permission to accept that within ourselves easier.
Exactly.
Than if we didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's the benefit of discussing these things in an open forum. It is, I mean, we think this is applicable only for us, but these are questions of the humanity. And some people don't want to talk them in a group, making them so personalized. And that itself is a defilement. If you have the courage to say that in a group, that itself shows that you are not holding on to what is going within you. That itself reduces the clinging. Yeah, so it's glad to hear that these discussions help you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank everybody else.
Thank you very much. You're most welcome. Yes, Mr. Senava. Anything else?
No more questions from Brisbane.
Right, okay. So then we can conclude the session. To conclude the session, can I request Chatu to chant the stanzas, please?